All right, welcome to Section 8 News. Today, we're going to be discussing the news and how the market is fluctuating and changing as we get closer to approaching the holiday season. And thank God, because summer is always an intense time for most of you to be able to get housing and vouchers. And as I've mentioned, I think back in January through March, summer is extremely difficult. So we're seeing that come to a close. But before we get started, I want to do a few introductions. I am the owner of Section8Consulting.com. Of course, you see my website here on the screen. We service around 700 to 1,000 clients a year. And I think we've got about 15,000 served as far as those that need vouchers and housing. Around 800 landlords served. And I think we've recovered around 7 to 10,000 vouchers for people over the years, 21 years. And we have a rotating success rate of anywhere from 87 to about 93%. And the pandemic, of course, has brought those numbers down because when you have a difficult period in our nation, it causes things to get more difficult. The difficulty to achieve certain goals get harder. Now, let's talk about my co-host. Many of you know that I rescue cats. I always throw that in my videos. We're all pet lovers, so I think it's always an interesting element to bring that up. So let's see if she's interested in talking with us. Come on, girlie. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. She's in the mood today. I think the lunch hour is over and she's had enough. So I won't bother her further. She's interested in taking a nap. That's how it goes. Sometimes you can't get your supervisors and employees to work harder. They're interested in the siesta. So, all right. Moving on from that, I want to tell you that we are now starting to reach a period where most housing authorities are opening. We also received a massive injection, around $233 billion, funded and underwritten by the United States President as well as Congress, and I think from both political parties signed on this particular agenda. A lot of that funding is now reaching all the 50 states. Those states will administer those funds down to local housing authorities and continuum of care programs. So for those of you out there trying to search and apply for housing, you're going to see the market start to open up a little bit. You know, under the old system, a lot of housing authorities found it very preferable to sit there and collect vouchers every year till they had a massive amount of them and then open. But what I'm seeing now is most housing authorities realize that's a bad plan. I don't think the feds and HUD are wanting to do that anymore. So what we're seeing is pop-ups, and that a pop-up is a situation where a housing authority gets a small fraction of vouchers for a specific reason. They may get a few $1,000,000 or $100 million, and they'll open temporarily just for a couple of days to go ahead and fill those. That's a long change from what it used to be, of sitting on vouchers, letting them collect dust for 10, 15 years, and then open up in this monstrous opening where a bunch of people try to apply and it's pure chaos. So I'm glad to see that we're starting to get there. Look, guys, you know, one thing I'll tell you about throughout the year, especially when we get from September all the way to March, that is your golden ticket. Most people, as I've mentioned in many of my videos, are a lot... well, they like to get vouchers and apply during the summer. And the problem is, so does everybody else. And so that's an intense, your competition's higher, the number of housing authorities lower, and it's the worst time you can do it. Now that we're starting to exit that this month, what you're going to see is we're going to reach our highest point around Christmas. And it will remain high all the way to March, and then it'll start to dissipate into summer, of course, spring, then summer. So we're in that golden period starting now, and each incremental month is going to make this better. So if you're going to pull the trigger on getting housing or a voucher, I would say that your effort should begin starting now. Look at it now. We're on the 13th. In 15 days, we enter the golden area. Now, where are we at in that golden area? We're in the beginning. But that, most of you know that even if you start applying at the beginning of the month, then what's going to happen is, you've got a month to 4 months, basically. A lot of people are under the mistaken belief that you can just simply go grab a voucher. You cannot. Many more on the belief that you have to wait 10 or 15 years and that it's a crazy system in order to get them. Well, there's a lot to learn. As a consultant doing this 21 years, I understand that, but there's a lot of preferable ways that many clients are able to get vouchers within a month, if not several months, especially when you're considering tax credit properties, when you're considering housing choice vouchers, Section 811, Section 202, and mainstream vouchers, permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, and emergency housing vouchers from the Housing Authority, emergency housing vouchers through Continuum of Care. That's at least 9 of around 100 I can name. The key factors are you have to target states and cities that are not inundated. So let's talk about the states that are most problematic right now. California has already fallen as a domino as the most difficult state to deal with. Second to that is now coming at Florida. I warned you guys for years about Florida. These big states, and I'm in one of them, Texas, okay? So as I warned you, what you saw play out in California was eventually going to play out in Florida, and we're seeing that. And I believe that it will be the second domino throughout the system. In the real early days, it was New York. New York finally figured out how to deal with a lot of their issues. And as we get further and another decade passes, probably Texas will too, because these states host more major cities, demand's greater, and so with great demand comes with great demand and also big city comes big homeless populations that greatly affects the ability of the housing authority to be able to give you vouchers. So what I can tell you is this, guys: if you're on the fence right now, you're struggling with housing, now would be the most appropriate time. If you budgeted or you've allocated some money and you're tired of stressing out and losing sleep and trying to figure out this system, then maybe it would be a good time to talk with a consultant. It doesn't necessarily have to be me. I'm not here to sell anybody anything. I'm just letting you know we're entering a golden market, and it will remain that solid till about March. And you'll have a lot of deep regret if you don't, okay? Now, last year, I warned everybody, I think in March, that, it's going to get overheated, and it did. The market, pretty much 95% of all housing authorities closed. All that federal funding dissipated. We've got a new round, and curiously enough, that big chunk of money just came right before the golden period. Don't think that Congress and the President and other people aren't keenly aware of when to fund the projects. That money stretches a lot further during that golden period because there's less applicants, which means they tend to look a little better through that period. Look, if you're wise, you'd always want to go on a day when you know the weather's the coldest, there's a blizzard outside, and there are no applicants. You have the higher ratio chance of getting a voucher then than you would any other time. But again, all the demographics, all the different counties and all the different states, every housing authority has different policies, all different reasons as to why they would accept a voucher and give you preference. So unless you're keenly aware of those factors for special use and the preferences they prefer, and whether or not they're a lottery or whether or not they're basing it on the actual demand of the city, could greatly impact how or if you ever get a voucher. Look, I'm going to check the time real quick, make sure I'm not rambling on, and if we're at over 8 minutes, I'm going to close it out. All right, we're at 8:20, Bob. So, look, I've enjoyed talking with you. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.